The YouTube channel D-Max UK is known for its bold explorations into the unknown. But one discovery stood out, a photograph of a hand that might have belonged to something extraordinary. It began when Bryce received an unusual picture. Someone had found what appeared to be a human-like hand, covered in hair yet ending in claws. Bryce looked closely at the image and said quietly, "I've never heard of Bigfoot having claws, but that certainly looks like a human, hairy hand."
He goes on to say, "I threw it back into the woods, but it wasn't until then that I realized what I may have had in my possession." You know, I've never heard any cases or people describing Bigfoot with claws, but I mean, that certainly looks like a human hairy hand. I think this is worth showing to the team.
He decided to share it with the rest of the team. When they saw the photo, their reactions were a mix of surprise and confusion. But the claws changed everything. Primate hands don't have claws, they have nails. This was something else entirely. Bryce asked his teammate Ronnie if he had ever heard of Bigfoot stories describing claws. Ronnie said that accounts were mixed. Some people claimed Bigfoot's hands looked human, while others swore they had claws for protection or climbing. No one really knew. The mystery deepened, and Bryce decided more research was needed.
Whoa.
What?
Yeah, strange, right?
If you stop short of the claws, it actually looks like a human hand.
Yeah.
But then primates don't have claws. We have fingernails.
I mean, do you think that could be a bear?
Or a wolf or a
raccoon?
coyote.
We're thinking this thing is bigger than what it is. I mean, this could be a raccoon's hand, right?
If you look at the knot
In the
on the
bag.
plastic bag, it gives you a slight reference. So it does look big.
The crew moved into the forest, following a faint trail that looked like something large had passed through recently. As they walked, they looked for signs, footprints, broken branches, or even nests. Researchers believe Bigfoot may build two types of structures: nests made of woven branches and tree formations bent and arranged in strange patterns. These, some say, could be markers or signs of communication.
These are large branches, or sometimes entire trees arranged in unnatural patterns. Oftentimes they appear like teepees, but have been reported to take on a variety of shapes. There are several theories as to what purpose they serve.
When it comes to tree structures, there's some different schools of thought. A lot of researchers, including myself, believe they're a form of communication. These are almost like road signs.
Then came a smell, sharp, musky, like wet fur. One of them whispered, "That's bear." The team froze. They realized they might have wandered too close to a bear den hidden in the rocks. For a moment, the mission shifted from mystery to survival. Still, the question lingered in everyone's mind. What was that hand? Human, animal, or something that lives hidden in the woods, just out of reach, waiting to be found?
As I got closer, the smell got real strong.
Yeah.
We seem to have stumbled upon a bear den on the trail, and it has me on high alert.
I'm waiting for something to pop up right behind those rocks.
We've been at this for hours here,
Yeah.
and this trail seems to go on forever. We are up against an incredibly dense population of black bears here, and we can see that this trail goes on for miles and miles. Why don't we call it a night? It's just too dangerous. Can't keep going.
The team from Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot has traveled to many remote corners of North America, but this time, they chose an unexpected place: Southern California. Just beyond the noise of Los Angeles, deep in the San Bernardino Mountains, people have been reporting strange encounters for years. Bigfoot sightings in a region so close to the city seemed unlikely. Yet, as the team soon discovered, the wild doesn't always hide where you expect it to. Researcher Matt Moneymaker led the investigation, joined by Bobo Fay, Ranai Holland, and Cliff Barackman. Their mission began with a witness, a man named Raymond, who claimed he'd seen a large, hairy creature cross a highway near Big Bear.
Even though we're not that far from LA, this environment is very good for Sasquatches, and Raymond's sighting only supports that.
To most, it would sound impossible. But when Matt left the road and walked down into the valley below, everything changed. The land grew quiet, the air heavier, and the sense of isolation set in. It was the kind of place, he said, where a Sasquatch could thrive, plenty of cover and water, and few humans ever venturing here. As night fell, Matt decided to camp there. The team spread out, ready to test the area with vocal calls and sound responses.
Here's where we'll do it from. And it's time to howl again.
On our first night, we didn't hear any coyotes, which was very disheartening because Bigfoots and coyotes often live in the same areas.
The next day brought a new story, a young woman named Honey, who as a child had seen something she couldn't explain while driving with her family near Big Bear Lake. Her father claimed to have seen 4 of them, tall shapes moving under the trees. Honey only saw one, but the image never left her mind. She described it as standing out in the open sunlight, tall and wide, at least 8 feet high. When asked if she thought it could have been a person, she paused, unsure, but leaning toward what her father had always said. It could have been a Sasquatch, she admitted softly.
Boy, this is a long ways from Big Bear Lake.
It is.
This is where it all happened then, I'm assuming. But let me get this straight. Your father actually is the one who initially saw them, is that right?
Yeah, my dad saw 4, but I saw 1 of the 4. Me, my brother, and my father, we were driving. My dad, he suddenly said, look over there. And I look over and I'm like, whoa.
Later, Bobo and Rane met another witness, Michael Crawford, who had experienced 2 separate encounters high in the mountains. He described hearing strange howls echoing through the night, then silence, followed by rocks being thrown at his car. When he returned the next evening, it happened again. He felt surrounded, as if something unseen was warning him to leave. Rane tried to stay skeptical, but even she couldn't deny how unnerving the story sounded. Back in the field, Matt continued exploring the dry slopes, searching for signs near Deep Creek, one of the few places with steady water in those mountains. He believed if Bigfoot lived there, it would stay close to that source. The landscape was harsh, the air dry, and yet the signs of life, bent branches, faint trails, whispered that something larger might be moving through. Even in Southern California, so close to millions of people, there are still corners of wilderness untouched by light. And maybe, just maybe, something ancient still walks there, silent, hidden, watching from the trees. The YouTube channel Renaissance Man has always been about raw, unfiltered outdoor life. The kind that brings peace and challenge in equal measure. But this trip to Harrison Lake felt different. What started as a calm family camping adventure slowly unfolded into something he could never quite explain. He had camped here before, among the mountains that rise like ancient walls, and the calm lake that mirrors the sky. But this time, he brought his family along, ready for a quiet escape. The air smelled of pine and wet sand, the kind of air that makes you breathe slower. The day began easily, a bike ride through rough trails, setting up camp beside the water, and organizing the truck for the night ahead. Everything felt right, until morning came. That's when he noticed them. Tracks. Large, wide prints pressed deep into the sand just outside their tent, the kind that made him stop mid-sentence. He knew his own footprints, his wife's too, but these were different. He crouched, tracing the outline with his fingers, realizing they didn't match anything human. That's the toe print, he said quietly to himself. That's not human. By the time he came back with his camera, the lake had risen. The prints were washing away.
Print from the Sasquatch. I'm not joking here, folks. That's not a human's toe print there. Like I said, there's another one way up here, which has been trampled and gone now. And then the next jumped up onto that log. Bugs are getting thick. I'm sorry. I didn't get the full footprint.
It was disappointing. Evidence lost to water and footsteps. But what unsettled him most wasn't just the prints. It was the feeling that something had been standing there, watching, close enough to touch the fabric of the tent. He stepped outside with a flashlight. The campfire had burned low. Then, footsteps, slow, heavy, moving away from the tent. Every instinct told him not to follow. His wife and baby were inside. The footsteps faded, but the chill stayed.
Heard someone walking right here. When I was first over here, listening for the rock throw again.
In the morning light, he walked the beach again. More small prints, wide, flat, spaced just far enough apart to seem strange. He followed them to a fallen log wedged high between two trees, at least 10 feet off the ground. It didn't make sense. The tree had clearly been cut, but how it got placed there was a mystery.
Just found these. That's smaller than my footprint, my wife's footprint, and it's pretty wide too. I don't know if you can get that. It's pretty sunny here.
The fear softened. They swam, played, and tried to shake off the night. Yet the sense of being watched never fully left. Even as the sun warmed the sand and laughter filled the air, something felt close. That night, the sound of breaking branches came again, sharp and sudden. He didn't chase it this time. He just stood there, listening to the waves move against the rocks, feeling that quiet truth settle in. Some places hold more than nature. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe a warning, or maybe, just maybe, something ancient came down to the lake to see who had entered its world. The YouTube channel Mountain Beast Mysteries has always stood apart for one reason: patience. Its creator has spent years walking the forgotten trails of the Canadian wilderness, searching for traces of something few believe and even fewer have seen. And over time, he's found things that keep that question alive. Footprints that don't belong to anything easily explained. He began this journey back in 2013, filming his first Bigfoot documentary. Since then, it's been years of cold hikes, long nights, and quiet moments in deep woods where the world feels untouched. In that time, he's only come across a handful of tracks that might belong to Sasquatch, a reminder of just how rare and fragile this search really is. He admits, not a single one made it to plaster. Out there, miles from any road, carrying casting materials just isn't practical. And sometimes, the ground doesn't cooperate. Moss too soft, snow too loose. But he's seen enough to keep looking, enough to wonder.
But this right here looks like a naked human-like footprint. I don't know how it's gonna turn up on there, but this looks like a heel. It kind of narrows out here, and it looks like toes. I mean, I'd say it's probably 12 inches only 12 or 13 inches. But if this is from a Bigfoot, it's the first track I've ever found.
The first track he ever found was simple: a bare, human-like footprint pressed deep into moss. It had a clear heel, the arch of a foot, even the faint suggestion of toes, only about 12 inches long, yet different, wider, deeper, not something you could mistake for a shoe or boot. He set his glasses down beside it for scale, realizing it was nearly double their width, just one track, lonely and distinct. Nearby, he also found the heavy impressions of grizzly paws, clear, deep, and fresh. Whatever had passed through that valley had come close. maybe even in the night before. It reminded him that these places are not empty. They're alive, layered with predators, prey, and mysteries still walking between.
Like, look how deep that is. So something was definitely walking through here very recently. Yeah, like it could have been last night, that noise we heard. I mean, this one, like, that's a pretty big paw, and they just keep going. I don't think we should follow those. That's pretty cool.
Years later, in another part of the backcountry, he found more snow tracks. Long strides, 3.5 feet apart, too far for any human to make with natural gait. Each print pressed deep, perfectly spaced, weaving through fences and trees as if a large bipedal creature had crossed through in silence. The snow rubbed clean in spots where something brushed past. He called his partner down for reference. The size was striking. Whatever it was walked upright. Left, right, left. Not the hop or bound of an animal. And the direction of those steps led straight toward the area where he had once left apples as an offering. The connection lingered in his mind. Maybe coincidence, maybe not. Some prints looked almost textbook. A defined heel, a raised middle ridge, what Bigfoot researchers call the mid-tarsal break, a small detail that some believe separates primate movement from human. Still, he stayed grounded. He knew that certainty doesn't come easy in this field. Each find has to be measured with reason, patience, and humility.
These are bipedal tracks. Like, this is from something walking on two legs. There's no doubt about that. And then it goes over here and then down. Something's been coming through this fence.
Yeah, and then I was like, well, then it goes down towards the fence, and that's where I put the apples up, over there.
Not every print was mysterious. Some turned out to be human. Others, tricks of the mud, marks left by slipping boots or melting snow. But every discovery carried weight. Because in this search, truth hides in the smallest details. The curve of a heel, the depth of a step, the silence that follows. Maybe not often, maybe not clearly, but enough to keep him going back, enough to remind him that the mystery still walks among us.
That looks good.
So I was just coming down the trail from that way, going this way, and there's an impression here in the ground. Now, if you look at it, like it's pretty big. It's about 2.5 of these cameras long.
The video comes from the YouTube channel The Bigfoot Conundrum. In it, a man from Taney County, deep in the Ozark Hills of Missouri, opens up about a mystery that has followed him for years. His story doesn't begin with fear or disbelief, but with quiet confusion and a growing sense that something else shared his land. He lives far from the main road, surrounded by thick woods and long valleys where deer move at dusk. For him, this land was peace. Open sky, the smell of pine, and the sound of water winding through the low ground. But over time, the quiet began to change. It started in the 1990s. One night, he heard a sound that didn't belong. Deep, rolling calls echoing through the hills. Then came another voice, and another, each from a different direction. He described them as coordinated, almost like a conversation carried by the wind. At first, he thought it might be animals, coyotes maybe, but the tones were too low, too human, the pattern too deliberate. As the weeks went by, the calls returned, sometimes at sunset, sometimes in the middle of the night, always distant, always watching. Then came the footprints.
It was what he saw that made him wonder who or what was crossing his land.
We found footprints that are anywhere from 12 inches to 17 inches long. They're all pressed into leaf mold, so we haven't been able to get a successful cast yet.
And he has proof.
That's when we found a picture about that time on my game camera from down there in the corner.
He found them pressed into soft leaf mold near the edge of the woods. Prints far larger than any man's, some reaching up to 17 inches long. The impressions were deep, as if whatever made them carried enormous weight. He tried to cast them, but the forest floor crumbled under the pressure of time and weather. Still, he knew what he saw. The moment that changed everything came one quiet night outside his home. He stepped out with a flashlight, batteries weak, the beam dull, and swept the light toward the trees 50 feet away. That's when he saw them, two glowing eyes wide apart reflecting back through the dark. They moved slowly, side to side, then disappeared behind a tree too small to hide something that size. In 6 strides, whatever it was vanished into the valley. That night, the man says, his doubt vanished with it. He began keeping a record, photos, recordings, notes of every strange noise and broken branch. He studied what others had seen, talked with the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and learned that Missouri, especially the Ozarks, has been a quiet hub of sightings for more than a century. Reports go back to the 1800s, old newspapers once describing a wild man of the Ozark Mountains.
And you can see we're talking 50 feet away, and that's where it was. When its eyes came out, they were setting off at an angle like this because he was doing this.
Yeah.
And then back around behind the tree. Well, the tree wasn't nearly big enough for him. He was bigger than the tree.
Yeah.
See, we're talking 50 feet away, and that's where it was. And it went bum, 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 bum.
Right there.
It was right there. In 6 steps, it cleared the edge of the property. It was gone.
Robinson now has a collection of photographs and recordings he claims are proof.
Even now, researchers like Ron Bowles with the BFRO confirm new encounters every year across Missouri and Arkansas. Today, the man's land has grown quiet again. The calls no longer echo across the valley. Sometimes, he says, he misses them. That strange presence that once felt both near and distant, real and unreal. He doesn't call it fear anymore, just mystery.
Kansas City Star, New York Times, about the wild man of the Ozarks.
Yeah. Robinson says the activity around his house has calmed down over the years, and he misses his Bigfoot.
But this guy was just a voice in the dark, and when he's gone, you feel a little bit like, yeah, he's part of it, and I would like to see him.
Tomorrow night, the debate rages on. Is there really a Bigfoot in the Ozarks?
This presence of a possible
something ancient that passed through his life and left its mark in silence. Whether it was a legend come to life or something we still can't explain, one truth remains. In the deep valleys of the Ozarks, there are still places where the unknown walks softly, just beyond the trees. The video comes from ABC News, a journey deep into the swamps of Florida where 2 men continue their search for something most people have only heard in stories. They're not thrill seekers or adventurers chasing myths for fame. They're believers, men who have walked long enough in silence to know when the woods are listening back. Mark Barton is 63. Chris Connor is 51. Together, they've spent years searching for what they call Florida's skunk ape, a creature said to stand 7 feet tall, covered in thick hair, half man and half ape, with an odor strong enough to give away its presence before it's ever seen. For them, it's more than a hunt. It's a promise to keep searching, no matter how deep the swamp goes.
Hey, get out of my way, I can't film.
It's 10 p.m. in Florida's Green Swamp.
Hear it, Mark?
Yeah, I hear that. I thought that was one of you guys.
No, there was something running towards us.
That's 63-year-old Mark Barton and 51-year-old Chris Connor.
The Green Swamp stretches over 100,000 acres, endless palmetto trees, thick vines, and murky water. It's a place where the air feels heavy and still, where every step could disturb something watching just beyond the reeds. For Chris, this place carries old memories. He says he first saw the creature as a child, years ago, when it moved through the brush with long, heavy steps and then vanished into the swamp. The image never left him. For Mark, the search began as a way to heal. When his wife grew ill, he promised her he would find a way to keep going. After she passed, he turned to the wild, to something unknown and mysterious as a reason to stay moving. That's when he joined Chris, and the two began what became a years-long journey through Florida's wild heart.
This video is, they say, they're jackpot proof. The day they nearly came face to face to it. That black speck right there, they say that's the skunk ape.
There's the eye opening up.
I do see some
right there.
movement.
Looks like some blinking possibly going on. There's the other eye.
It does look like something big and dark and
see it
hairy.
right there?
It's not a hog.
No, it's not a hog.
When people say you're crazy, your answer is
We're going to do our part to be able to show what's really out there.
Together, they formed a quiet brotherhood built on trust, out there, surrounded by snakes, alligators, and the endless hum of insects. They rely on one another. If one stumbles, the other helps him stand. If fear sets in, they share it until it fades. What keeps them going isn't danger. It's faith. Faith that something extraordinary still hides out there. They've seen shapes in the dark, caught movements in the distance, and found large, human-like footprints pressed into wet ground. Sometimes the swamp falls silent, and both men swear they can feel a shift in the air, like something powerful has entered their space.
Are you looking at a footprint, Chris?
Yeah, it's not enough. I'm just saying it looks like there's some characteristics there. With a large toe and another digit and another digit.
It's very small, though.
And so,
see, a hog won't do that. A deer won't do that.
It looks like the toes are splayed just a little bit, but it's not good enough. But it's just of interest to pay attention to.
It is of interest. I'm just saying I don't hear birds.
Prejudge you. I mean,
we passed an area right up there,
and
to me the atmosphere changed in the woods for me.
Yeah.
If they're in the area.
They've even recorded strange knocking sounds echoing between the trees, a deep, hollow rhythm unlike any animal they know. Skeptics might call it illusion or hope, but to Mark and Chris, it's real. They've spent countless nights listening, waiting, believing that the next step or the next call might bring them face to face with what they've been searching for. The wilderness of Alaska holds more than mountains and mist. It holds questions, quiet, ancient, and unresolved. People have vanished here without a trace, and locals speak of something watching from the dark edges of the forest. Some call this region the Alaska Triangle, a stretch of wild land where mystery lives in the silence. Through this fog and fear, a team from the Travel Channel sets out to find the truth. Their journey isn't about proving legends wrong, but about understanding what drives them. What makes so many witnesses tell the same story, of a creature, half man, half beast, that walks the woods when the world goes still. They travel deep into the abandoned village of Port Chatham, a place almost erased by time. Long ago, families here left suddenly without warning. The reason, according to those who remember, was the Nantinak, the hairy man. Hunters had gone missing, tools were found twisted, bodies torn apart and left near the shore. The fear spread like fire, and soon no one remained.
You're showing me the way, yeah? Because you just pointed it out to me.
After a tense wait in the abandoned cabin, the three hunters decide to go in search of whatever it was they heard moving around outside. And soon, they come across some massive tracks.
Guys.
Decades later, the team steps ashore. They begin searching for signs, tracks, markings, anything unnatural. It doesn't take long. Prints appear in the moss, large, human-like, but spaced too far apart. Something with weight had passed through here recently.
We've got some fresh tracks down here. Looks like a large animal, but they're freshly compacted to something came through here very recently. Yeah, the grass is compacted. There's been no spring upwards. They're new. Should we follow it?
Absolutely.
What do you say? Let's do it.
Night falls fast in Alaska. Shadows become shapes, and shapes begin to move. The team hears what sounds like breathing, deep, rhythmic, from somewhere just beyond the light. Then, a low growl drifts across the valley. Not a bear, not a moose. Something different, something that feels aware.
And Sasquatches don't do that. What they have is a great big toe, which can even sometimes deviate. This is a beautiful track. I love this track. Also, it seems to be nicely wide at the heel. I like that. That wide heel. In humans, you only get that when you're a few months old. It doesn't last for very long.
They stand still, flashlights trembling, the silence pressing in. A shape moves between the trees. Tall, massive, its outline swallowed by fog. Cameras catch only fragments. And then it's gone. The woods fall silent again, as if nothing ever stood there. By morning, they find more evidence. Broken branches, heavy impressions in the soil, and a new track near their camp. For them, it isn't proof, but it's something that lingers.
And sure enough, we saw these incredibly large foot tracks all over this area. You could clearly see the toe prints and the heel, and it was shaped just like a human foot, but much larger.
A reminder that mystery still breathes in these forgotten places. For Travel Channel's team, this was never just an expedition. It was a journey into the unknown, into the heart of Alaska's oldest fear. The story of the Nantianak remains unfinished, but perhaps that's what makes it real. In the deep wilds of Alaska, truth moves quietly, and sometimes it walks on two legs. In the wide, empty spaces of the Southwest, silence carries its own kind of presence. On this cold January afternoon, that silence was broken by something unexpected, a moment that would change what one woman believed about the world around her. This story comes from the YouTube channel J.C. Johnson, where field researcher J.C. sits down with a local witness named Alex, calm, clear-eyed, still trying to understand what she saw that day. It happened just after 4:30 in the afternoon on January 4th. The light was still soft, the snow fresh on the ground. Alex had taken her small electric four-wheeler out for a ride with her dogs, a simple winter habit. They ran ahead through the brush, chasing scents, until suddenly they came bolting back down the hill, all of them, except one. She slowed the Polaris, scanning the tree line. Then she saw movement, a tall shape behind a massive tree. At first, she thought it was another dog, or maybe a person, but it didn't move like either. Her dogs froze, began to whimper, then scattered. And then, just ahead of her, standing 8 feet away, were 3 enormous figures. The largest towered at nearly 12 feet, dark and solid, with shoulders as broad as a doorway. Beside it stood a second, around 10 feet tall, and a third, smaller, reddish in color, about 8 feet high. They weren't hiding, they stood in plain view.
And I was running my dog Zor, and he was running all over the place as usual, and I thought he was in front of me, but then all of a sudden all the dogs came running down from the hill, and then whatever was in front of me was still right there behind the really big tall tree. And I was really shocked because I didn't know what it was. It kept moving, all of a sudden it stopped, and then I kept driving without thinking, and finally the 2 dogs, one of my sister's dogs and my other dog, they just stopped in front of me and it made me stop the Polaris.
Alex describes their faces as part human, part gorilla. The nose flat but structured, the eyes alive and aware. The smallest one, the reddish figure, reached down toward her missing dog, Zor. It made a soft whistling sound through its teeth, and the dog walked straight to it. Then, gently, the creature bent low and scratched behind Zor's ear. The dog flopped to the ground, relaxed, as if greeting an old friend. That's when Alex remembered something her family had noticed weeks before. How Zor's chain had been found surrounded by T-bone bones, steaks left neatly beside him. Whatever these beings were, they had been visiting, feeding him. As Alex sat frozen on her four-wheeler, her hands turned white against the steering wheel. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. She just stared. 2 full minutes of silence, of disbelief, of awe and fear blending together.
Like 3 different times.
3 different times they found bones there with it. Now, when you started staring at them, how long were you staring at them, and then what caused you to turn around and head back?
I stared at them for like about 2 minutes at the most, and then my hands were starting to turn white. I was really scrunching the steering wheel of the Polaris because they're a lot more bigger than me, obviously, and I didn't know what to do, and I just stood there like kind of shocked, just staring at them because they were 8 feet in front of me.
Then, The smallest one stood upright. The middle figure shifted forward a step. That was enough. Her body woke up, instinct took over, and she threw the machine in reverse, backing away fast, leaving Zor behind for only a moment. When she reached home, her mother looked at her pale face and asked what happened. All Alex could say was, "3 big guys." Her mother nodded slowly and said, "My hairy boys." Later, when she was calm enough to speak, Alex admitted something. She wasn't afraid anymore. They hadn't harmed her. They hadn't even seemed angry, just curious, watching. And sometimes that's the part that stays with you the longest. Not the fear, but the knowing that something else is out there, and it saw you too. Footage, courtesy, Animal Planet. The team meets with 3 generations of the Bradford family, people whose lives have been tied to this Appalachian land for centuries. From eerie howls to shadowy figures moving through the trees, their encounters with Bigfoot stretch back to the 1700s. Stories that have never stopped.
So we have 3 generations of the same family in front of us here?
Well, Ernie, my daughter Linda, my granddaughter Lakota.
And all of you have experienced Sasquatch activity at one time or another?
Well, even together.
The wind whispered through the Appalachian hills as the investigator faced the Bradfords, their old farmhouse standing quiet under the trees. "How long has your family lived here?" he asked. Mary replied softly, "Since the late 1700s. Then came the real question. How long had the Bigfoot stories been around? Her expression changed. "My great-grandfather used to warn us," she said. "Never go too deep in the woods. Something ancient lives out there, and it watches."
And how long has your family been on this piece of property?
Back to the 1700s.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Late 17s.
And how far back did the Bigfoot activity go?
We've heard tales of it from our great-grandfather. They would tell us to be careful and not get too far out, or don't get in the woods playing.
When it was Lakota's turn to speak, her voice trembled. She remembered the day clearly, playing soccer when her ball rolled down the road. As she chased after it, a chill ran through her. Up on the ridge stood a massive, dark figure, taller than any man, motionless, just watching.
How about you, Lakota? Have you ever seen one?
Yeah,
Where did you see one?
up there.
What happened?
I was playing soccer with my friends. When the ball rolled down the road, that's when I noticed it was looking at us. It was up on the hill. It was standing there watching.
Matt Moneymaker asked her to describe it. Lakota said it never crouched or moved. It just stood there, broad-shouldered, blackish-brown, and real enough to make her freeze.
And so it came down. Did it sit down, or was it standing up?
Standing up.
And what color was it?
Blackish brown.
Her mother, Landa, stepped in. She remembered that day too. Lakota pointing toward the hill, her face pale. Landa followed her gaze and saw it. A huge, shadowy figure, unmistakable against the trees. "That's when I knew," she said. "Our family stories were true."
I came outside and she was like, "There's something up there watching us." I saw it standing up on the hill. That day I saw Bigfoot.
The atmosphere grew tense. Matt asked if they realized what they were seeing that day. Lakota shook her head. "We just thought it was a big, hairy man standing there," she said quietly. Matt laughed lightly, but Landa spoke up, calm and firm. "I've always told them, if it doesn't mess with you, don't mess with it."
So you and the friends were sitting there playing and talking about it, and you all knew it was there? Did you all know it was a Bigfoot?
No, we didn't know what it was. We just thought it was a hairy man standing there.
You guys are weird kids. Most kids would have freaked out.
I tried to basically teach them not to be afraid. As long as it don't mess with you, don't mess with it. You know, I mean, that's my thing.
When asked if the creatures ever came close to the house, Landa nodded. "After my daughter's birthday, we heard knocking slow at first, then heavier, like something circling the house. My mother looked out the window and saw it. Tall, dark, standing just beyond the glass."
Do you think they've ever come around the houses?
Oh, yes. There was one that was looking in my oldest daughter's bedroom window after we had had a birthday party. We heard knocking, not really like he was knocking, like he was kind of pushing his way around. but my mom saw the figure in the window.
Finally, Matt turned to Ernie Bradford, the family's elder. Ernie, what's the earliest encounter you can remember? Ernie's eyes narrowed. Maybe 40 years ago. I was driving down the road when I saw something holding a deer blood everywhere. He paused. I thought I was seeing things, but I wasn't. It was real. 3 generations, 1 family, a legacy of encounters that refuse to fade. Something still walks these woods, and maybe it always has. Footage courtesy Travel Channel. David never thought a simple camping trip would change the way he saw the world. One quiet night, he and his friend were resting in their tent when strange noises started moving around them. Heavy steps, low breathing, and something circling close. Trying to scare it off, they stepped outside and froze. A massive, shadowy figure stood only yards away. Something neither human nor animal, but completely real. A man later spoke about his lifelong connection to the woods, a place he knew better than anyone. He described how some parts opened wide, while others were so thick you could barely see ahead. It was familiar ground, but what he saw that night made him question everything.
I could identify the woods because there was a peace and a serenity about them, and so I really tapped into that. The woods there's some places where you can see a good ways, then there's others you can only see for maybe 20, 40 yards.
David and his friend hiked up a hill, looking for a good spot to watch for deer. They found a clearing and decided to make camp. "Good job, Davy," his friend said. "Why don't you start the fire?" It was quiet, nothing unusual, at least for now.
As we began the journey up the hill, we talked amongst ourselves, and we said, if we want to have a chance to see any deer, probably the next best spot would be up on top of the hill, because you can see for a long ways.
Good job, Davy. Thanks. Want to go start the fire? Sure.
We found a real good place to pitch our tent. It was just the perfect spot.
As night set in, David said he was heading into the tent. His friend stayed outside a bit longer. It seemed like nothing, but that choice would matter later.
I'm getting tired. Shall we get in the tent? I'll fall behind.
They had just settled in when a loud snap broke the silence. Then another, closer this time. It wasn't a small animal. Davy whispered, "Did you hear that?" The others listened. Something was out there.
It's about 1:30 in the morning. We started getting tired. We laid our head down to go to sleep, and just started getting relaxed. I heard snapping noises. The snapping noises was louder than a raccoon or a squirrel.
Wake up! What? I heard something. It's on my answer.
George leaned over and said, "On 3, we'll jump out and scare whoever's messing with us. 1, 2, 3. They stepped out, but it wasn't a person. A massive figure stood ahead, covered in dark hair, its chest broad and solid. It didn't move, just watched.
George said, "Hey, on the count of 3, let's go out and scare him. He thinks he's up here scaring us." I goes, "Okay." So he goes,
1, 2, 3.
And then I see what's actually standing there. It's not George's brother. I see this thing is about this wide because I'm looking straight at it. I'm looking almost like at its chest and the shoulder area. And it's about 3.5, 4 feet wide, and it's all hairy.
David couldn't look away. Its eyes were black and empty. Beside him, George whispered, "Oh my God, Dave, that's Bigfoot."
My mind was going in 1,000 different directions at that point, thinking, what in the world is this? I had literally raised my head up to see its head, and that's when I caught its eyes pure black, pure black. George, he goes, "Oh my God, Dave, that's Bigfoot."
The next morning, David told George's dad what happened. He looked up from his coffee and asked, "He's back?" David frowned. "Who's back?" Bigfoot, he said quietly.
The next morning, we all sat down to breakfast, and George's dad was there. We said, hey, we had an experience last night.
What do you mean?
He's back.
You sure?
I said, well, what do you mean he's back? George's dad said, Bigfoot, Dave. I said, when did you guys see it?
Later that day, they found tracks, long, wide, and ending in 3 toes. George's dad stared down and said, tracks don't lie. David felt a chill. This thing must be huge. Look how far apart the prints are. George's dad's tone turned serious. Pack your stuff. We're leaving, David nodded. Whatever made those tracks is still out there. Footage courtesy DMAX UK. In the deep backcountry, Bigfoot investigator Bryce Johnson drives down a misty trail to meet Jenny, a lifelong local who claims she saw the creature up close. A year earlier, she'd found massive footprints near her home, photos she still keeps as proof. Tonight, Bryce hopes her story might uncover something real, something that could finally explain the legend that never dies.
So I'm on my way to talk to a lady who grew up in this area her entire life. And she came across footprints just last year. And she managed to take some photos of them. But she was a little hesitant to talk about over the phone. So I'm going to go talk with her, see what she has to say, and see how it can help our investigation.
Bryce leans forward. So, Jenny, you mentioned you've experienced strange things here. Can you tell me a bit about that? Jenny hesitates, her eyes flicking toward the trees. It's hard to talk about. Brings back memories I've tried to forget.
So, Jenny, you told me you experienced some strange things in this area. Would you be willing to tell me a little bit about that? What are you feeling?
A little hesitation. A flood of emotion bringing back things.
She explains how she and her childhood friends used to hike those woods. One afternoon, something changed. We were just walking when one of the girls froze. Her face went pale. She couldn't even speak. Jenny swallows hard. That's when I saw it. Behind a tree, something tall, black, and watching us.
We had decided to go on a little hike up the woods, and her older sisters were in front of us.
So there was 4 of you?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. I look over, and her sister has this look on her face, just frozen with fear.
Bryce asks, could it have been a bear? Jenny shakes her head. No, it was taller, maybe 7, 8 feet. Its shoulders were massive. It turned, looked straight at us, and then it moved. The sound it made, I'll never forget it.
And there's something tall and black standing just off from a tree.
Could it have been a bear?
No.
How tall was this thing?
Tall. I had to look at it. And it was big. It was at least 7 feet. I remember the sound of it coming after us. It's because it actually turned and looked at us and opened its mouth.
Later, Jenny calls over her friend Tony. Look at this, Ki, she says, pointing at a trail of prints in the mud. Tony crouches down. That's your footprint, but it keeps going. Whatever made this, it's not human. Jenny steps back. And it's huge.
And I said, Tony, come here. Are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
So that's my foot. And it keeps going forward. And this isn't human. This is an animal. And I'm like, this is huge.
Jenny kneels beside one print. See this? That's the big toe. The stride's about 5 feet. Bryce studies it. Wait, there's another track inside it. She nods. Yeah, smaller. Maybe a younger one followed right behind, like a baby sticking close to its mother.
Whatever this was pretty big. It extends 5 feet out from the other one.
Wow.
And when we really got to look, and it looked like there was another footprint inside of that footprint.
A smaller footprint inside one of the bigger ones.
And if you look really close right through here, maybe there was something stepping in the side of the tracks.
Yeah.
If you ever notice deer, the fawns stay really close to mom. And I was like, could this be baby that are following their mother?
Bryce and his assistant Maria examine another track nearby. Heel here, 5 toes, no tread marks, he says. Maria nods. Too smooth to be a boot. Bryce looks toward the cattails swaying nearby. If Sasquatch comes through here, this is where it hides. Quiet, safe, plenty to eat. He straightens up. Something big's been here, and it knows how to stay unseen. He paused, scanning the shadows beyond. Tracks don't just show up by chance. Something big has been here, and it knows exactly where to go.
Looks like a track. Looks like a heel. You want to point out there's the heel.
Right here. And then what looked like 5 indentations here.
Right.
And some sort of an arch shape here.
She was thinking initially it's a boot, but we don't see any tread.
It's all smooth here.
Yeah.
Maria carefully covers the print with a tarp, securing the edges against the damp earth. We'll protect it in case it rains overnight, she says, her tone steady but tense. Tomorrow morning, we'll come back to scan it properly. She stands, taking one last look at the massive impression on the ground. Whatever made this, she says quietly, was something powerful, moving through these woods. Footage courtesy Small Town Monster. Steve Coles, known to many as the Squatch Detective, painted a vivid picture of New York's wild beauty, a land where misty mountains met endless plains and deep forests gave way to silent swamps and winding rivers. As a veteran Bigfoot investigator and researcher, he described a wilderness teeming with moose, deer, and roaming black bears. To Coles, this wasn't just rugged land, it was prime territory for wildlife, and perhaps something far more elusive.
We have mountains, we have plains, we have forests, we have swamps, we have rivers, we have bogs, we have all sorts of wildlife. We have moose, we have plenty of deer, we have black bear. There's a lot of great fishing in New York.
In fact, years earlier, when prisoners escaped from Dannemora, they managed to remain hidden for weeks before finally being recaptured. Despite the use of advanced technology, helicopters, tracking dogs, and other search methods, the dense and unforgiving Adirondack wilderness kept them concealed. In the end, it was their own mistakes, not the efforts of the search teams, that led to their capture.
In fact, years ago when there was the escape of prisoners from Dannemora, that they were able to stay hidden for weeks until they were finally captured or recaptured. That was because the terrain was so tough. We used all this technology of helicopters and tracking dogs and so forth, and yet it was their own mistakes that got them captured. So the wilderness is very dense.
Then came August 24th, 1976. 3 teenagers driving along a bare road saw a towering figure near a telephone pole. Hair-covered, upright, and massive. They sped into town to alert police, setting off one of the most famous Bigfoot investigations in U.S. history.
And it became famous because it involved several police agencies. So August of 1976, August the 24th, 3 teenagers spot a creature walking near a telephone pole on Abear Road. They're startled. They don't know what to make of it. So back then there were no cell phones, there's no communication like that. So they took off in their vehicle and rode into town to talk with the Whitehall police dispatcher on duty that evening.
Soon, officers from multiple departments converged on the site. Newspapers blared the headline, "Officers Track Creature," and nearly a dozen witnesses described a 7 to 8 foot figure with glowing red eyes and long swinging arms. Its shriek, a cross between a pig's squeal and a woman's scream, echoed through the woods.
And they responded with Whitehall Police, New York State Troopers, and Washington County Deputy Sheriff all responding to the scene. So that became this landmark case because that incident was put on the front page of the paper, the local paper, which was the Post-Star. And it was an article called "Officers Track Creature," and that described this Bigfoot-type creature.
Over the next week, nearly a dozen witnesses came forward, all describing the same mysterious figure, 7 to 8 feet tall, walking upright like a man, but built like a gorilla. It had dark, matted hair, long swinging arms, and eyes that glowed red in the night. The sound it made was unlike anything local hunters had ever heard, something between a pig's squeal and a woman's scream. The creature seemed to avoid light, vanishing whenever flashlights or headlights swept across the trees. While the 1976 sightings became legendary, later research uncovered an earlier case, one from May 1975 at the Skeene Valley Country Club in Whitehall, New York.
And basically, over a period of about a week, we had as many as a dozen witnesses that spotted this creature described as being 7 to 8 feet tall, walking like a man but looking like a gorilla, having dark fur or dark hair, and having red glowing eyes, long swinging arms, and making a sound like a pig squealing or a woman screaming. And it appeared to be afraid of light, or at least sensitive to light.
Cliff Sparks, a lifelong Whitehall resident and seasoned outdoorsman, was golfing late one evening when everything changed. The quiet of the green broke as something massive stepped from the darkness. Standing over 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered and deliberate in its movements, it radiated raw power. Its eyes glowed a deep red, casting narrow beams of light that locked onto his terrified dog. Seconds later, the creature turned and charged back into the woods, crashing through the trees with impossible force.
I sat there, I kind of stunned for a minute, and this big thing, over 7 foot tall, built like a monster with terrific shoulders and long arms, was right in the middle of the green, and he stared at more at the dog than he did at me. And there's like these red lines coming out of his eyes, almost like laser beams. And the dog just hung its head over the cart and stayed there.
A few years later, in the early 1980s, another chilling encounter surfaced. Dan Gordon, a respected police officer, was on patrol near South Bay one cold February night in 1982 when something enormous crossed the road in front of his cruiser. He slammed the brakes, stepped out with his weapon drawn, but whatever it was had already disappeared into the dark. Could the same creature that terrified Whitehall in 1976 still be out there, lurking in the shadows of the Adirondacks, watching, waiting, and walking among us?
And that was their usual patrol at about 4:30 in the morning. And so as they're going out to the South Bay area, this would be February of 1982, they encounter a road cross sighting, which is probably the most common type of sighting, in which a creature crosses the road in front of their cruiser. They pull the cruiser over, Dan does, he was driving. He puts it in park. The other officer stays in the car. He gets out of the car, draws his weapon, and then tries to pursue the creature, but the creature is long gone.
Footage courtesy, Wild Man of Wilderness. Step into the darkness where legend meets reality. In the swamps of southwest Arkansas, whispers speak of the Fook monster, a creature both feared and fascinating. For Todd Jurasek, chasing Bigfoot feels like being a kid again, running through the woods, imagining monsters in the dark. But now it's real. Every sound hits harder, every shadow feels closer, and when branches snap nearby, he knows he's living the monster movie for real.
Tell you what I like about Bigfoot stuff is it takes you back to being a kid. So you're a kid, you go outside in the woods, you're playing in mud puddles, you're getting dirty, and you're fantasizing the monsters, whereas with the Bigfoot stuff, you're 40 years old, blowing whole paychecks, running around the country in mud and rocks and stuff, and going, at the end of the day, I wasted a lot of money, but boy, that sure was fun.
As night fell, the team pushed deeper into the Arkansas swamps. The narrow dirt road twisted through dense trees, their headlights cutting through thick mist. Then they stopped. A cottonmouth snake lay coiled in their path, unmoving. The woods had gone silent. In that moment, they knew this wasn't just another investigation. Something out there was watching.
We're on this road, dirt road in the middle of nowhere. It is so freaking loud out here with frogs and bugs. And it is creepy as hell. It's like a tunnel of trees. We literally just pulled off to the side of the road because there's a cottonmouth in the middle of the road. So this is no joke. Man, this place is creepy.
Ken Gerhard, a cryptozoologist and field investigator, had one of his most unforgettable encounters on August 18th, 2003 at Cottonwood Lake in North Texas. He and his team were following reports of Bigfoot sightings when just after sunset, deep, guttural grunts echoed from the darkness. Nothing like any known animal. As they shone their spotlight across the lake, two glowing yellow-green eyes stared back from high above the ground. Whatever it wasn't human. Ken said that when you hear a Bigfoot, you don't leave. You stay, because that's where the truth hides. All night, eerie moans echoed across Cottonwood Lake, rising and fading like distant howls. At dawn, the team found deep, human-like footprints in the wet sand, and nearby, large turtle shells ripped clean in half, as if something powerful had been feeding there.
You heard a Bigfoot set up camp right there. That's basically the message of that story, because that's where the work needs to be done. And throughout the course of the night, there was some other weird stuff. We heard these moans coming across the lake, kind of like howling noises. And the very next morning, when we finally got daylight, we were able to cut our way into this heavy brush, and there was a beach on the lake, and there were some deep human-like footprints in the sand, and there were a bunch of good-sized turtle shells that had been ripped in half from top to bottom and like just scattered there.
Years ago, Bigfoot researcher Jerry Heston shared the story of a hunter who ventured into the Arkansas bottomlands with his dog one night. Out of the darkness came a massive, hairy creature that hissed like an enraged cat and hurled swamp water toward him. Terrified, the man fled and later swore never to return, selling all his hunting dogs out of fear. After all these encounters and chilling discoveries, one question remains. Could something truly be watching from the shadows of the Arkansas swamps? Or are these just echoes of our deepest fears? Each encounter leaves a chill and a question. Who or what is really walking out there? The unseen giants still hide in plain sight, but these raw clips bring us closer than ever. Whether you're a believer or just curious, remember, legends often start with something real. So, could Bigfoot still be out there, watching us back?